In the beginning of most relationships, everything feels alive. Conversations flow naturally. Small moments feel meaningful. Even silence feels comfortable. In the beginning of a relationship, communication feels effortless. Words come naturally, and conversations stretch for hours without anyone noticing the time passing. Two people feel curious about each other's thoughts, their dreams, their fears, and even the smallest details of their day. There is a natural desire to listen, to understand, and to share. In those moments, communication becomes the bridge that connects two inner worlds. But over time, something subtle begins to change. Life becomes busy. Responsibilities grow heavier. Work, stress, and daily routines slowly begin to occupy the space that once belonged to meaningful conversations. At first, the change seems harmless. The long late night talks become shorter. Messages that once carried warmth and excitement turn into quick responses. The depth that once existed in conversations slowly becomes surface level. Instead of asking, "How are you really feeling today?" people begin asking, "How was your day?" And the answer becomes just one word, "Fine." Yet behind that simple word can exist 1,000 unspoken emotions. Communication does not disappear in a single moment. It fades gradually, like a light that slowly loses its brightness. The danger is that most people do not notice this change. When it first begins, they believe everything is still normal because there are no big arguments, no dramatic conflicts, and no obvious problems. But silence can sometimes create a greater distance than conflict ever could. When two people stop expressing their inner thoughts, misunderstandings quietly begin to grow. Feelings that should be spoken remain locked inside the heart. Small disappointments go unaddressed. Frustrations remain hidden. Over time, these unspoken emotions begin to pile up like invisible walls between two people. What once felt like a safe space for honesty slowly becomes a place where both individuals hold back their true feelings. One person may start thinking, maybe it's not worth bringing this up. The other may believe they probably wouldn't understand anyway. And so both choose silence. The problem with silence is that it allows assumptions to take the place of understanding. When people stop communicating openly, the mind begins to create its own stories. A delayed reply suddenly feels like indifference. A quiet evening feels like emotional distance. A small change in tone can feel like rejection. Without communication, the heart begins to feel alone, even in the presence of someone it once felt deeply connected to. Over time, this lack of meaningful conversation can make two people feel like strangers sharing the same space. They may still live together, eat together, and go through the motions of daily life, but the deeper connection that once existed slowly weakens. The emotional intimacy that once made the relationship feel alive begins to fade. Communication is not only about exchanging words. It is about revealing the inner world that lives behind those words. It is about allowing another person to see your fears, your hopes, and the parts of yourself that you do not show to the rest of the world. When that openness disappears, the relationship begins to lose the very thing that once made it meaningful. Many people believe relationships end because of major conflicts, but often the real reason lies in something much quieter. It lies in the slow disappearance of honest conversation, the gradual loss of curiosity about each other's inner life, and the silent acceptance of emotional distance. Two people who once spoke about everything can slowly reach a point where they no longer know what the other person is truly thinking or feeling, not because they stopped caring, but because the habit of deep communication was slowly replaced by routine, distractions, and silence. And without that bridge of understanding, even the strongest relationships can begin to drift apart. In many relationships, The greatest battles are not fought with harsh words or loud arguments. They are fought quietly within the mind, where pride and ego begin to take the place of understanding. Two people who once cared deeply about each other slowly begin to protect their own pride more than the connection they share. At the beginning of a relationship, people are often more willing to listen. They try to understand each other's feelings, perspectives, and experiences. When misunderstandings happen, there is usually a desire to resolve them quickly. Both individuals value the harmony between them, and they are willing to soften their pride in order to restore peace. But as time passes, ego can slowly begin to grow. Ego is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it appears in very quiet ways. It appears when a person refuses to admit they were wrong. It appears when someone feels that apologizing first would make them look weak. It appears when the need to be right becomes more important than the need to understand. Instead of asking, "Why are you feeling this way?" the mind begins to ask a different question. Why should I be the one to fix this? This shift is small, but it changes the entire direction of the relationship. What once felt like a partnership slowly begins to feel like a competition. Both people start defending their own position instead of trying to understand the other person's experience. When ego enters a relationship, listening becomes difficult. The moment one person begins to speak about their feelings, the other person may already be preparing a defense. Rather than hearing the emotion behind the words, they focus on protecting themselves from blame or criticism. Over time, conversations stop being about understanding and start becoming about winning. Each disagreement turns into a silent struggle where both individuals try to prove that their perspective is the correct one. But relationships are not meant to be courts where one person must be proven guilty and the other declared right. They are meant to be spaces where two imperfect individuals learn how to support each other through misunderstanding and growth. Ego also creates emotional distance in subtle ways. When a person becomes too attached to their pride, they begin to build invisible walls around their heart. Admitting vulnerability becomes uncomfortable. "I was wrong" feels threatening. Expressing softness feels like losing control. As a result, people begin to protect their image instead of nurturing the relationship. Small arguments that could have been resolved with a simple conversation begin to grow heavier over time. Each unresolved moment leaves behind a trace of tension. Gradually, these moments accumulate, creating an atmosphere where both people feel guarded instead of safe. One person may begin to think, "They never try to understand me." The other may feel, "They always blame me." Yet beneath both of these thoughts lies the same hidden struggle, the desire to protect pride. The truth is that ego often disguises itself as strength. It tells people that standing firm and refusing to bend is a sign of self-respect. But in relationships, true strength often looks very different. It looks like the courage to listen without defending. It looks like the willingness to say, "Maybe I misunderstood you." It looks like choosing connection over victory. When ego dominates a relationship, both individuals slowly stop seeing each other as partners. Instead, they begin to see each other as opponents. In an ongoing emotional struggle, even simple disagreements can begin to feel like threats to personal pride. Over time, this constant need to protect one's ego drains the warmth from the relationship. Conversations lose their openness. Vulnerability disappears. What once felt like a place of emotional safety slowly becomes a space where both people feel the need to defend themselves. And in that environment, understanding becomes rare, even between two people who once knew each other deeply. One of the quietest sources of tension in a relationship is not anger, betrayal, or even conflict. It is expectation that lives silently inside the heart. Expectations often begin in very small and innocent ways. A person hopes to be understood, appreciated, supported, or comforted. These desires are natural because every human being longs to feel seen and valued by the person they care about. In the early stages of a relationship, many of these needs seem to be fulfilled without effort. Two people pay close attention to each other. They notice small changes in mood. They sense when something is wrong and naturally reach out with care. Because of this, it becomes easy to believe that the other person will always understand what we feel, even when we say nothing. But as time passes, life becomes more complex. Stress, responsibilities, and distractions begin to occupy the mind. People are no longer able to observe every emotional detail the way they once did. Yet the expectations inside the heart often remain the same. A person may silently hope that their partner will notice when they are feeling overwhelmed. They may wish that their partner will offer comfort without being asked. They may expect the other person to understand their needs without them having to explain anything. When these expectations remain unspoken, they slowly begin to create disappointment. The other person may not even realize that something is expected of them. They continue living their daily life, unaware that their silence or inaction is being interpreted as a lack of care. Meanwhile, the person holding the expectation begins to feel hurt. Inside their mind, a quiet thought appears: if they truly cared about me, they would know. But this belief often places an impossible burden on the other person. No matter how deeply someone cares, they cannot always read the hidden language of another person's emotions. Human beings are not mind readers. Understanding requires communication. When expectations are not expressed openly, they transform into silent tests. A person begins observing their partner's behavior closely, waiting to see if they will notice something on their own. If the partner fails to recognize the need, the disappointment grows stronger. This disappointment may not immediately turn into anger. At first, it often becomes quiet sadness. The person may withdraw slightly. They may feel less motivated to share their feelings. Over time, they may even begin to believe that their partner simply does not care enough. Yet the truth is often very different. The partner may care deeply, but remain unaware of what is truly needed. This is how unspoken expectations slowly create emotional distance between two people who genuinely care about each other. One person feels misunderstood, while the other feels confused by the growing tension. Eventually, the hidden expectations can turn into resentment. Small moments that once seemed insignificant begin to feel like proof of neglect. A forgotten message, a missed gesture of support, or a lack of attention during a difficult moment can suddenly carry a much deeper emotional weight. The relationship begins to suffer, not because love disappeared, but because important feelings were never shared openly. When two people stop expressing their needs clearly, the space between them becomes filled with assumptions. Each person begins interpreting the other's behavior based on their own expectations, rather than through honest conversation. Over time, both individuals may feel that something is missing in the relationship, even though neither fully understands why. The connection that once felt effortless becomes strained by misunderstandings that were never meant to exist. What started as a simple desire to be understood slowly transforms into a quiet cycle of disappointment and confusion. The heart continues to hope for understanding, but without communication, that hope remains hidden beneath layers of silence. Emotional distance rarely appears suddenly. It does not arrive with a loud argument or a dramatic moment that clearly announces its presence. Instead, it grows slowly and quietly, often unnoticed at first. Two people may still share the same space, live under the same roof, and follow the same routines, yet something deeper between them begins to fade. In the beginning of a relationship, emotional closeness often feels natural and effortless. People share their thoughts openly, speak about their dreams, and reveal the parts of themselves they normally keep hidden from the world. There is a sense of safety in being vulnerable, a feeling that the other person genuinely cares about what is happening inside your mind and heart. But over time, small changes can begin to appear. A person who once spoke freely about their worries may start keeping them to themselves. Someone who used to share their excitement or fears may decide it is easier to stay quiet. At first, these changes seem minor. Perhaps someone had a stressful day and did not feel like talking. Perhaps they felt the other person was too busy or distracted to listen. Yet when these moments repeat themselves again and again, a subtle shift begins to take place. Conversations that once carried emotional depth slowly become more practical and routine. People start discussing schedules, responsibilities, and daily tasks, but they stop sharing what is happening within their hearts. The relationship begins to function smoothly on the surface, but the emotional connection that once made it meaningful gradually weakens. Sometimes emotional distance grows because if people feel misunderstood in previous conversations. If someone shares their feelings and receives a response that feels dismissive or indifferent, they may hesitate to open up again. The mind begins to protect itself from disappointment by avoiding vulnerability. A quiet thought may arise. Maybe it's better if I keep this to myself. Over time, this protective silence becomes a habit. The person who once shared everything now shares only what feels safe. Their deeper emotions remain hidden beneath a calm exterior. The other person may not even realize that this change has occurred. From the outside, everything still appears normal. But inside the relationship, the sense of closeness begins to weaken. Emotional distance also grows when people become too absorbed in their own individual struggles. Work pressures, personal stress, and daily responsibilities can consume so much attention that there is little energy left for meaningful connection. Even when two people sit together in the same room, their minds may be somewhere else entirely. Phones, screens, and endless distractions often replace the quiet moments that once allowed two people to truly see each other. Instead of sharing thoughts or reflecting on their experiences together, they remain occupied with separate worlds. Slowly, the relationship shifts from a place of emotional presence to a place of physical proximity without true connection. The most difficult part about emotional distance is that it can exist even when there is no conflict. Two people may rarely argue. They may treat each other politely and fulfill their responsibilities as partners. Yet something essential is missing. They no longer feel deeply known by each other. The warmth that once existed in their conversations becomes less frequent. Laughter becomes shorter. Silence begins to feel heavier rather than comforting. Both individuals may sense that something has changed, but they may struggle to explain exactly what it is. Without realizing it, they have stopped sharing their inner world with each other. When emotional closeness disappears, the relationship begins to feel less like a connection between two hearts and more like a routine partnership. The deeper bond that once created intimacy fades into the background, replaced by habits and daily obligations. And although both people may still care for each other, the invisible space between them continues to grow, slowly separating two lives that were once deeply intertwined. In the early stages of a relationship, appreciation comes naturally. Small gestures feel meaningful, and even the simplest acts of kindness are noticed and valued. A message in the morning, A thoughtful word or a small effort to make the other person smile can create a deep sense of warmth. Each person feels grateful for the presence of the other, and that gratitude strengthens the emotional bond between them. During this time, people often pay close attention to the little things. They notice when their partner makes an effort. They acknowledge kindness and express thanks. Even ordinary moments can feel special because both individuals are fully aware of the value the other person brings into their life. But as time passes, familiarity begins to change the way people see each other. The things that once felt special slowly start to feel normal. A kind gesture that once brought excitement becomes something expected. The effort someone makes every day is no longer recognized with the same appreciation as before. Without realizing it, people begin to assume that the other person will always be there, always giving the same care and attention. This is the moment when appreciation quietly begins to fade. When people start taking each other for granted, they stop noticing the invisible efforts that hold a relationship together. The daily sacrifices, the quiet acts of support, and the consistent presence of the other person slowly become part of the background of life. Because these efforts are always there, they are no longer acknowledged. Yet every human being has a deep emotional need to feel valued. When appreciation disappears, even the most caring person can begin to feel invisible. They may continue doing the same loving actions, but without recognition, those actions slowly begin to feel heavier. What was once done with joy may begin to feel like an unnoticed responsibility. Over time, this lack of acknowledgement can quietly weaken the emotional connection between two people. A person may start to think, does what I do even matter? They may feel that their presence is no longer truly seen or valued. This feeling does not always lead to immediate conflict. Often, it simply leads to emotional withdrawal. The person who once gave freely may begin to hold back their energy. Small expressions of kindness may become less frequent. Effort may slowly decrease, not out of resentment, but out of a quiet sense that it is no longer meaningful. Meanwhile, the other person may remain completely unaware of this change. They may still believe that everything is fine because the relationship continues to function as it always has. Responsibilities are still fulfilled, conversations still happen, and daily routines continue without interruption. But beneath the surface, the emotional warmth that once defined the relationship slowly begins to cool. Taking someone for granted also creates a subtle imbalance in the way people view each other. Instead of seeing their partner as someone unique and valuable, they begin to see them as a permanent part of their life that requires little attention. The mind becomes accustomed to their presence in the same way it becomes accustomed to familiar surroundings. Yet relationships require continuous awareness to remain alive. Without appreciation, the small moments that once nurtured love begin to lose their meaning. Words of gratitude become rare. Genuine compliments become less frequent. The sense of being cherished slowly fades from the relationship. Over time, both individuals may begin to feel that something is missing, even if they cannot immediately identify the reason. The relationship still exists, but the feeling of being deeply valued is no longer as strong as it once was. When people forget to recognize the importance of each other's presence, love does not disappear instantly. Instead, it slowly weakens under the quiet weight of neglect, where appreciation once existed, but gradually faded into silence. All the quiet forces we have explored, the slow fading of communication, the grip of ego, unspoken expectations, emotional distance, and taking each other for granted, share one thing in common: they thrive in silence. They are subtle, almost invisible, yet powerful enough to weaken even the strongest relationships over time. The truth is, relationships do not fail because love disappears suddenly. They fail because attention disappears. They fail because care is assumed instead of expressed. They fail because two people forget to truly see, hear, and value each other every single day. But the good news is that the remedy is just as simple and just as quiet. Speak, listen, apologize without pride. Express gratitude, share your feelings, even the small ones, and never assume your partner knows what you need without telling them. Presence, patience, and understanding are the quiet acts that keep love alive. Every relationship has the power to thrive if both people choose connection over ego, expression over assumption, and appreciation over neglect. Love is not a dramatic moment. It is the daily, consistent act of choosing each other again and again. And when two hearts do this, no silent destroyer can ever break them.